All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to BSides Las Vegas, the proving ground. This talk is Making Your Website Vulnerable for Fun and Security Awareness, given by Kenny Jansson. A few announcements before we begin. We'd like to thank our sponsors, especially our Inner Circle sponsors, Critical Stack and Volleymail, and our stellar sponsors, Amazon, BlackBerry, and Cylance. It's their support along with other sponsors, donors, and volunteers that make this event great and possible. Just another friendly reminder, these talks are being streamed live, except in the underground. And as a courtesy to our speakers and our audience, we ask that you check and make sure your cell phones are set to silent. If you have a question at the end of the talk, flag me down. I'll be roving with this microphone. We just want to make sure that we get your questions on the audio for the live stream as well. And with no further ado, turn it over to Kenny.
Okay, good morning. So in October 2018, a number of our own developers in Storebrand in Norway were challenged to hack a clone of our own website. So we did this to increase the offensive security awareness of our developers and have them better understand our digital services from our threats point of view. Because without a cybersecurity background, it could be challenging for developers to understand the real impact of a vulnerability. Let's take XSS vulnerabilities as an example. Many pen testers and automated tools argue that XSS vulnerabilities are really dangerous in the report, but they rarely have the time or ability or budget to create a proof of concept of anything but an alert box. But when the developers read this report, they may not be as convinced that XSS is something to worry about. Since the web application have security headers and security flags on the cookies, many developers often believe that the user session is indeed well protected and that negative business impact during an attack is low. Especially on reflected access when there is a prerequisite that a user must click on a link. But most cybersecurity aware people know that users do click links. And most web app hackers know that securing the cookie does not fully protect the user session. However, many developers I worked with assume that securing the cookies will fully protect the user session. Only when giving those developers insight of the same origin policy, etc., from an offensive perspective, the real consequence of XSS becomes clearer. To give developers vulnerability insight from an offensive perspective, we could use vulnerable applications such as BWAP, WebGoat, and Vulnab, etc. In Storebrand, we have conducted regular CTF events to increase our developers' offensive security awareness. We have used online CTF services for this purpose. Although these are great in showing how to technically exploit a vulnerability, they are less great in showing what a certain vulnerability means to the company's business and the digital services supporting this business. So we thought, the security guys, that if we identify where a future vulnerability could typically reside on our own web page, introduce that vulnerability in a clone of our website, and then challenge our developers to attack the clone website, this might give some insight what the vulnerability could mean to our business and reduce the risk that it is unintentionally introduced on a real website. So we went ahead doing this as part of our Security Awareness Month. We started by identifying new and business critical mechanisms on our website, and one such mechanism was our chatbot. In Storebrand, the chatbot provides a means for communication for customers. They can ask questions and quickly get answers or direction. The security team was aware of future plan of improving the chatbot with authenticated access to customer data. We immediately thought of the risk if this is done in an insecure way and what role an XSS vulnerability could play in such a scenario. XSS attacks have become among the most common attack methods on web applications these days, and with an increase in automation and robotics, it is extra important that such human simulated mechanisms are protected. So to show our developers how dangerous these XSS vulnerabilities can actually be in the context of Storebrand's business, we went ahead and created such a challenge in our new CTF, which was a front-end clone of our website linked to a vulnerable backend. So this is our website, and this is the clone. Our website, clone. See the difference? There is no difference, and that's the point here. To do the cloning, we used HTTrack to clone the front end into our Docker container. we created server responses in a vulnerable PHP backend and then linked those responses to the front end. Then for showcasing the challenges, we used CTFD. In CTFD, we had challenges ranging from XCC vulnerabilities to brute force, etc. But the main challenge involved exploiting our chatbot, which we made vulnerable to XSS. This was actually a browser that frequently looked at anything that was typed in the chat window. So if one submitted a JavaScript into the chat window, then that script would run in the context of the chatbot, which had access to sensitive information through an API. The cookies used by the chatbot was protected by HTTP only and secure flags. Thus, to successfully complete this challenge, one would have to trick the chatbot and submit an XML HTTP request to make the chatbot store the sensitive information into a variable and then send this to a listener controlled by the attacker. 5 participants managed to complete the chatbot challenge, and afterwards we got some feedback that the chatbot challenge was a great way of showing session hijacking. However, we also received feedback that the clone contained many false positives and dead links. Another thought was that a CTF on a real web application instead of a clone could prove more valuable. So the question is, could a CTF on a real web application be possible without altering the web application and production test environment? What if I told you yes? You can achieve a simulation of vulnerabilities on your website without going through the hassle of cloning a website or altering the real web application. We can achieve the concept of a vulnerable website by using a proxy that loads a pre-written script or filter that contains rules for altering the responses to the requests. So to use this in a CDF, the competitors would simply surf the website through your proxy. On my GitHub repo, you may find a script called vulnfilter. The script contains example of vulnerabilities that you could introduce and how to do this. I know of 2 ways to connect through the filter, either through our normal proxy or with our reverse proxy. So here is a brief overview of the script. It's using a text editor. But let's dive into some more specific details and demos that uses this script and setup. So this example here shows how to rewrite our chatbot JavaScript with midden proxy. What we do is using midden proxy script function with a Python script to rewrite the request. Since the JavaScript dictates how the browser will behave, everything typed to the chatbot would now go to our vulnerable backend. In a CTF, this server would of course not be on local host, but on a remote IP reachable by the participants. Alternative ways to reroute traffic is to simply create a redirect response including all the parameters, or you can do it this way. Here we take the parameter SQL and we route it internally to our vulnerable SQL/PHP backend on port 800. And we write the response with a response from our SQL backend. This example shows how to insert a path traversal vulnerability in the file parameter of the URL. If you copy some files and folders into a web server directory, for example here port 900, then those files would reflect when someone requests them in the file parameter, including at least 4 ... slashes. The example here shows the etc password being reflected. If it's not clear yet, using midden proxy this way can be done on any website. This example here shows how to insert a reflected XSS in the queue parameter on Bing. If we search for my search string on bing.com and look in the source, we would find this highlighted string here. This is what we could match and replace in order to insert the XSS. Note this particular reflection is within a CData tag. So to get the XSS to work, we need to close the CData tag. So let me demonstrate here, and just be clear, we are not finding real vulnerabilities on Bing here. We are only rewriting the response locally. However, to be on the safe side, only attempt this type of research on websites that do have a bug bounty program. So what I was seeing here is that a browser that is not set up to go through a proxy, and there will be no vulnerability here. Now, when we instead load this in a browser that is set up to go through a proxy, and we run the same XSS, we pop an alert box. We just gave a whole talk about how popping an alert box doesn't get a point across. So let me demonstrate something that could give some more insights about XSS on Bing. So Bing has a history page that stores information about the user's search history. So what if this could be stolen by an attacker through the implemented XSS that was shown on the search page on Bing.com? So here we have an attacker's email client. The attacker prepares to send an email to the cookie monster claiming that he has been phished and urges him to click the link on behalf of Bing. The attacker has a logger that logs requests. The attacker sends the email, and now the cookie monster uses his browser to check his email. He has received the email here and urgently clicks on the link, which takes him to the Bing webpage with some strange data. Of course, here we have it. Of course, it could have been any content displayed here. And when the attacker now gets into his logger, you will see that he has gotten some data here. And if he searches for flag, he finds the flag. So this is basically the Cookie Monster's search history in rendered form here. And this is what was sent to the attacker's logger. So how did we do this? We want to steal the search history of the user. Second, we want to send this to a listener. So our XSS payload becomes this JavaScript code shown up here, which achieves just that. It basically stores the content of the search history into a variable called data and then posts this to our logger. Posting content to other sites usually works. It is usually only the content to show on the website that is restricted by security headers, same origin policy, etc. So this was our full link, which was put inside a link that says click here. Of course, we could have loaded this from an external source, making the URL smaller. However, we would have then been subject to browser protection mechanisms such as same origin, CORS, etc. A third alternative is to use a third website with a shorter URL that basically contains this link in our redirect. So let's do one more demo. And this time, what if BSidesLV had an XSS on their webpage? How could an attacker have exploited this in the wild? And how could this be demonstrated in terms of a CTF? So let's imagine the following scenario. The cookie monster wants to go to BSidesLV, but he is too late. Or is he? The cookie monster receives an email that lets him know that he is not too late after all, and that he can still donate and receive tickets if he does it through this special offer. So he clicks the link, and the following unfolds. So the cookie monster is taken to BSidesLV.org. He shows to donor. And he fills out his credit card details and name. And his payment is being processed. Payment successful. So now the attacker has gotten the credit card details of the cookie monster, which we also could call a flag, in the same logger that we used in the previous proof of concept. So the attacker exploited an XSS in the event ID parameter on BSidesLV.org. This parameter does not exist, but was created with a Python script injected into Midden proxy. The URL in the email basically contains a JavaScript that overrides the iframe element and displays another donor page that steals the user's credentials. So to use this scenario in a CTF, the participant could be hinted to send an email containing a link that exploits an XSS and overwrites BSidesLV's iframe with the participant's own page. Behind the scenes, the inbox is monitored by the CTF host that clicks on any link and submits the credit card number or flag into all form fields. This could also be automated if many participants, of course. So I hope you get my point how such a scenario is different from popping an alert box. The developer of this particular site should now have a better understanding of the real implication of XSS on this specific website through hacking his own website. So consequently, one advantage of making your own website runnable through a proxy or clone or filter and run it in a CTF event is that you can increase awareness amongst the developers of the real business impact of a vulnerability. And another advantage is that you could increase awareness of how your web application's defense mechanisms and the browser protects the users when surfing your website. It is rather easy to modify the headers with a proxy. And it is easy to set up a CTF tailored to your environment, your business, and your type of data instead of running the CTF in a generic web app where the goal is to exploit vulnerabilities with little business context. Finally, while the participants are busy looking for the flags in a production or test environment, they may actually come across weaknesses with no flags or point associated. Like the student here, who were tasked to color the Danish, Swedish, and Finnish flag, but drew a gold flag instead of the flag for the country Finland. The student did not color the right flag, but don't you think he should get some point for the creativity? Likewise, a participant in a CTF that runs in a real environment may not find a real vulnerability, and if one does make sure to assign some extra point because actually you did get a free pen test. Well, that's it. Here are my contact details should you wish to reach out. Do you have any questions?